This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Well, to the thousands of people who listen to us, Gary and I were just discussing, you're gone next weekend, right, Gary?
I am. I'm going to be out for just a couple days, but shouldn't interrupt our recording schedule.
Right. And so we were also discussing this is the great dilemmas that we have. When do we record? And I was saying, or I was telling Gary, I was with a couple of people who claim to know. You love that? Claim to know.
I mean, look, you're running around with people who claim to know. I'm running around with people who claim to think.
Well, the people who claim to know that the vice presidential pick was made yesterday, at least internally, and is going to be announced this week. So Gary and I were discussing, do we record Tuesday, Wednesday? And my immediate pushback was, I said, well, wait, let's just talk about this. Let's see people see our internal machinations. I'm assuming if it's announced Tuesday or Wednesday, Kamala's vice presidential pick, that will kind of suck up the news cycle so that other things won't be able to get through. What do you think, Gary? Yeah,
absolutely. If it's announced, we should definitely discuss, and we'll have a bit of a buffer between recording and air. But who exactly do you think it might be? I've seen all of the speculation. Certainly, Pennsylvania is a key sector, and there's been 3 or 4 people floated. Certainly, Mark Kelly out of Arizona, and Governor Walz, I believe, is also one of the frontrunners.
So I'll give you what I have heard just out in the ether, and then I'll give you what those who claim to know are saying. Out in the ether is that Pete Buttigieg, that Walz, who, by the way, is a very intriguing guy and choice, Beshear, who is the governor of Kentucky, Josh Shapiro, who is the former AG, current governor in Pennsylvania, and Senator Mark Kelly, who's married to Gabby Giffords and is the current senator out of Arizona. And if you on the outside, if you just read things that are out in the ether, apparently former President Obama was a big proponent of Mark Kelly. Yeah. And there are others who are proponents and have been of various others. I'm told by those who claim to know that the selection has been made, and it was Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania, and that's who will be announced.
Yeah, I mean, important state. Certainly, the convention's being held there in that state, so that would make a lot of sense. Kelly, obviously, astronaut. Former, married to Gabby Giffords. But, with that one, you have to select a new senator and the razor thin majority in the Senate. So that's a little risky, possibly.
Oh, I asked that same. It's amazing. Without even being in the room, Gary, I said the same thing. Why would you pick a senator? But, when you're doing the parlor game of who's it going to be? And I said, no, that doesn't matter because there currently is a Democratic
governor. Sure. But he has to run again. And I believe it's 2 years, right?
Correct. I believe. And I did not do a deep dive, but that was the immediate retort. I'm also told, and I hate repeating this, but I'm just going to say it anyway, because it was the people who claimed that it's been widely reported that former Attorney General Eric Holder, who's at a law firm in D.C., and the law firm was hired, and he's leading the vetting process, and that there was some issue with the vetting process of Senator Kelly, which always, and the reason I hesitate to even bring it up is because I just think that that's the worst when people kind of spread that or put that out there, because then your minds, you tend to get into conspiracy theories and blah, blah, blah. I hate that, but
it's always surprising to me when somebody who is already a sitting U.S. senator, they go through vetting for higher office and all of a sudden there's an issue. It's, really? I mean, it seems like the vetting process would be pretty similar. Obviously, it's not. Obviously, it's more intense for the higher office you get. But that kind of thing has come up more than a few times in my life, and it's always a little bit confusing to me.
Yeah, and I think distressing in some ways, because anybody can level, as you and I have talked about for years, anybody can level an accusation. It's easy to do, but does that mean that there's any basis, or does it withstand scrutiny? The whole reason for doing criminal defense is to test government allegations, and so that's kind of goes against every fiber of my being. Part of the calculus, if you will. And once again, this is people who claim to know. And why do I keep saying that? Because a lot of people claim a lot of things, and I don't know that they're necessarily true. But the calculus is that given the momentum, and what do I mean by momentum? I think if anybody who honestly 2 weeks ago said that they thought that Kamala Harris, as we sit here recording this on Sunday, would be the nominee by acclamation and would have momentum and have closed the polls, as we sit here today, 2 weeks later, I think most people, smart money, so to speak, would have bet against that.
Yeah, I do too. I think that would have been unlikely. I mean, I think it might have been reasonable to say that there was a chance that Joe Biden wouldn't be the nominee, but to say that Kamala Harris was sitting in the front running position with, $250 million raised, that I would have been very skeptical of that kind of an opinion 2 weeks ago. Excuse me.
Yes, you could have set an over under for the Democratic Party not being able to raise over $100 million 2 weeks ago. In the 2 weeks, $50 million a week, and I don't think anybody would have taken the over.
No, and it depending on the reports, she raised half that in 2 days. So it's certainly been a meteoric rise, and I think that a lot of people who were concerned after the debate were beyond relieved, to the point of opening their checkbooks in the days after current President Biden put out his statement on Twitter a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah, which I think, wasn't it just 2 weeks ago as we record this? I mean, that's
it was 2 weeks ago Sunday. Yeah, it was absolutely wild.
Yeah, it really is shocking. I can take that maybe next, if we record on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'd like to take that and put that in perspective and into some legal cases as well, because I think that there's a calculation that's being made in a lot of spots.
Yeah, I would love to. I just it's also just so crazy that the current sitting president would announce that he's no longer going to run for re-election, and announce that on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days. I don't know that Elon Musk, no matter how hard he tries, is ever going to be able to move away from calling it Twitter. But for that statement to be put out, I understand that he had COVID and they didn't want him to go on camera looking feeble. But for that statement to just be released on social media, it's just hard to believe as someone who grew up in a time where social media wasn't a thing.
By the way, and I'd like to just, since you've been you were early money also on this, I'd like to just point out, how far away are we from when Elon was kind of forced into his purchase of Twitter, aka X?
I'd have to look it up, but I don't think it's been much more than a year.
Yeah. Do you remember how many people were predicting the demise of the platform?
Oh, all the people.
So it's interesting as well.
Yeah.
I also was watching, and I'll leave it at this. I was watching a MSNBC, as I want to do, and for those of you who will throw things at me, remember, I think we are equal opportunity curmudgeons, as I like to say, when it comes to things that are reported. And they were doing I believe specifically Rachel Maddow was doing a whole analysis of Peter Thiel. And for those who don't know, Peter Thiel is a fabulously wealthy
venture capitalist, co-founder of PayPal, Elon Musk friend, right-wing rich guy from San Francisco, I think is probably the easiest way to distill it down for those who may not know.
And famously, if you believe the reporting, famously bankrolled the Hulk Hogan Gawker lawsuit that was tried and won and forced Gawker into
into oblivion.
Into oblivion and bankruptcy, and now is being on the MSNBC, at least as I was watching. The argument was being made is that he had two acolytes, and his acolytes are Blake Masters, who ran unsuccessfully for Senate in Arizona and is now running for a congressional seat, and a senator first-time senator who won in Ohio in a slim margin, named JD Vance, who has now been put on the ticket, the Republican ticket, by Donald Trump. If once again you believe the reporting, you'll believe that was done at the behest of Eric and Don Jr., and that was Trump's way, under the MSNBC theory, that was Trump's way of ingratiating himself back with Peter Thiel, who had announced that he was not going to wade into presidential politics, even though his acolyte, who he is apparently, if you once again believe what's being reported, bankrolled his campaign and his entry, his being JD Vance, into politics.
Yeah, it's also been reported that the aforementioned Elon Musk personally made a phone call to former President Trump and advocated strongly for JD Vance. So, it's hard to imagine that these things are not at least somewhat intertwined, whether or not they're being, reported exactly the way they are on MSNBC. It sure seems like, if you're reading the tea leaves, that these things are at least connected in some way.
So one of the things that has, speaking of Twitter, at least in my feed, the thing that has taken over my feed are the JD Vance couch memes. Are you familiar with these, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, if you're on Twitter or social media at all and interested in politics, it certainly depends on who you follow. But if you're in that realm, it's really inescapable at this point, I would say.
Right. And would you explain the genesis of it? This is, by the way, Gary and I did not talk about this. This is just complete two guys having a talk, because the genesis of the couch meme, I was a little perplexed at first.
Yeah. So I was perplexed at first as well. Some of these political things that have cropped up recently have really just kind of come out of left field for me. And I've had to do some Googling to try to figure out what the genesis is. To the best of my understanding, the genesis of the couch memes was from a left-wing Twitter account that tweeted that on specific pages of Hillbilly Elegy, JD Vance admitted to making love to a couch and having an intimate relationship with a couch. To the best of my understanding and my reading and researching, the tweet in question has since been deleted, and the pages in question do not contain what was alleged. But that has not stopped the internet from absolutely taking over, and I have seen more images of sexually suggestive couches than I thought could possibly exist.
You have could you put up the Chelsea Handler post about this, and then while you're doing that, find a couple of the couch memes, so those who are watching us on YouTube. And by the way, I'm going to, I think, Gary, on the other side of this, I'm going to talk about this in terms of merch. Maybe have a little merch contest. Oh, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's see here. I'm trying to pull up that Chelsea Handler thing now. It's going to take me just... Had a, I thought it was a good shtick, if you will, for where she was talking directly to the audience who may be in this feed. Yeah, it's I have seen it before. I didn't have it ready, but I'm pulling it up right now, and we should have it in just a moment here. By the way, for those who always criticize Gary's eyes, when kiss my ass. Yeah, well, I remember what he's doing right now is not only talking to me, but searching for something as I kind of riff on it and to put it up for your viewing enjoyment. So,
yeah, exactly. Let's see. Here it is right here.
You might have heard Donald Trump's running mate and future star of his own Dateline episode, JD Vance, is ruffling quite a few feathers this week.
We're effectively run in this country by a bunch of childless cat ladies who look at Kamala Harris. The entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
Listen up, you wingnut elegy. This country is still controlled by men in systems that were set up by men that are carefully crafted to continue to benefit men. So to put it in women-hating terms, you'll understand you're being hysterical. But let's be clear. There's no correlation between childless people and the presidency. For example, our very first United States president, Mr. George Washington, didn't have children. In fact, he had 2 stepchildren. That's right. Just like someone else I know. And to your point about Kamala not being fit because she's not a mother, I'd like to remind you that no president in the history of the United States has ever been a mother. But maybe if she had 5 kids with 3 different men and a scandalous affair with a porn star and was convicted felon, that would be more palatable to Republicans men. I mean, my God, are we tired? You sad, diet, Mountain Dew drinking, couch humping, dolphin porn aficionado, all of us childless cat and dog ladies are going to go from childless and crushing it to childless and crushing you in November. And before you tell me he didn't really fuck a couch, spare me. I grew up in New Jersey in the 80s where everyone had a couch in their basement, and I know a couch fucker when I see one.
It's pretty good.
Come on, no matter what side you're on. I mean, at the end is that's Chelsea doing what she does best. By the way, the little rant, if you will. Do you drink Diet Mountain Dew, or have you?
I'm an adult. No. Diet Mountain Dew. Get the fuck out of here.
I've been off of diet drinks. Well, I guess.
I've been off soda for almost. I mean, I'm not going to claim I don't ever drink soda, but in terms of it being a regular thing that I have in my house, probably a decade.
Right. I would say, I don't know. Somebody will probably, in my world, will probably tell me I've got a retrograde great amnesia, but I've been off of Diet Cokes for quite a while.
I haven't seen you with a Diet Coke in quite a long time. I mean, there was a time that you used to bring me. I would say the closest I got to that would be the sugar-free Red Bull that I've been off for 2 or 3 years now. But there was a time where you would bring me those, and you would come with yourself for a sparkling water or something like that. Which, right, by the way,
sparkling water is kind of where. But I will admit that when I did, there you go. When I did diet drinks, that kind of Diet Coke was the baseline. But if you really wanted to bring your game, it was Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yeah,
but Diet Mountain Dew was never a contender as I think about it.
No, and I got to be honest, there's been a lot of focus on Diet Mountain Dew because that's what's been in question in the social media realm for the past few weeks. But I got to tell you, regular Mountain Dew was also never on the menu for me. I just Mountain Dew. I won't say I've never tried it. I certainly have, but it was never something that I drank and thought, oh, this needs to go in the rotation. Just I suppose we're never going to have them as a sponsor, although it could be programmatic, but that's where we're at. Gary, I knew that would stop you in your tracks. Once again, as my mother taught me, if you don't have anything nice to say.
Do you want to end with? We should, since it's nominally a legal show, should we at least end with a legal story, which is the train wreck? And I say that lovingly and affectionately. That is the Young Thug trial in Georgia. How this case has not. I mean, it's clearly gone off the rails, but how somebody is just not declared a mistrial and it's over with and stick a fork in this is beyond me. But
I don't really understand how that hasn't happened yet. I will commend the new judge who struck all the proceedings after June 12th, which was when the whole kerfuffle happened, where Young Thug's lawyer discovered that the then sitting judge had an ex-parte meeting with a witness and the prosecutor, and by all accounts compelled him and threatened him into testifying when he didn't want to. When his lawyer, Brian Steele, I believe is his name, found out about that, he asked for a mistrial and was told to go fuck himself, and was also held in contempt and threatened with and sentenced to, but it didn't end up happening, going to jail. The new judge has gone ahead and retroactively, struck all the testimony since then. And I think that was absolutely the right thing to do, because that's what the law calls for.
Well, by the way, and I'd like to use that as what does Obama used to say, a teachable moment?
Yeah.
For all of those who denigrate or throw shade, how's that for me using?
Look at you, Mark Garrigus, millennial.
At criminal defense lawyers. If you're ever accused, rightly or wrongly, of a crime and you've got a lawyer, don't you want a lawyer? And isn't the system designed to have a lawyer who's not going to be afraid of some judge making false accusations at your lawyer, or carrying the water of the prosecution, or basically putting a finger on the scales of justice? I mean, that's the whole idea of being a criminal defense lawyer. And by the way, as soon as you start to borrow Brandon Sullivan, who was a legendary Williams and Connolly defense lawyer, I'm not here as a potted plant. And I really commend Brian Steele, because I think the way he took on that judge, refused to be cowed, it could be an inspiration. There's a master class of the way you should push back on judges who don't understand what they're doing, don't understand or have lost sight of what their role is. As opposed to being an umpire, they are an advocate, or as my father used to love to say, they're a second prosecutor in a robe. And that's exactly what was happening in this trial.
I could not possibly agree more. I have said, maybe not on this podcast, maybe I have, who knows, but if I'm ever pulled over in Fulton County, Brian Steele's my first call, because he was fearless. And
I was going to say it's nip and tuck with Ashley Merchant. But,
absolutely. Whoever answers first.
Fred Grubman, but
Yeah, no, whoever answers first of those three, I would agree. But Brian Steele's, resilience and inability to back down against that judge when he saw and learned of an injustice is exactly what you want in a defense attorney. And, that judge was being absolutely unreasonable, and he was out of line. And that's evidenced by the fact that, it's now being struck down. And Brian Steele is, I think, extremely commendable in his full-throated defense of his client. That's exactly what you would want in a defense attorney. And I have been working recently, as you know, on a few legal cases, and I have seen, what you need in a defense attorney, and it's Brian Steele in spades.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. We could probably end it right there. And Gary, we'll see if those who claim to know were right, and if so, we'll have a special surprise on the next week's show. How's that?
I think we're going to have a special surprise, even if those who claim to know weren't right. But it's just a matter of whether or not they were, what that special surprise will be. Mark, thank you so much for making some time for us on a Sunday, and we will see you next Sunday with a pre-recorded episode.
You got it. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.